Today we're going to be reviewing how to solve one-step equations with integers, and this should be familiar to you, especially since all of you guys have now learned how to do two-step equations with integers. But first we're going to go over what inverse operations are. Inverse operations, it just means the opposite. So the inverse of addition is to subtract. The inverse of subtraction is to add. They go hand in hand. The inverse of division, oops, that's an arrow, is multiplication, and then vice versa. The inverse of multiplication is to divide. And you're going to need to use inverse operations to isolate variables when you're solving with equations. On number 1, you have negative 78 equals 6 times s. So we're always going to start on the side that has the variable, and a variable is just the letter. Again, this should all be review. But the inverse of multiplying by 6 is to divide by 6. And you were always taught that what you do on one side of the equal sign, you have to do to the other. So I've always drawn, it won't let me draw a line. There we go. I've always drawn a line through the equal sign. That way I continue to do the same thing on one side as I do on the other. But anywho, now I'm going to have to divide negative 78 by 6. So you need to remember your division and multiplication rules. When you divide a negative by a positive, your answer is going to be negative. So 78 divided by 6. 6 can go into 7 one time. I will subtract, get 1, drop down my 8. That's an arrow. It just looks sloppy. 6 can go into 18 3 times. And then I would get 0. So my answer is negative 13. This is another multiplication example. We're not going to do that. Let's go to here. Whenever you see it set up like this, that means division. And we need to get the h by itself. And the inverse of division is to multiply. So we're going to multiply by 3, and that cancels it out and leaves the h alone. Now we have to do negative 9 times a positive 3. A negative times a positive is going to be a negative answer. So 9 times 3 is 27, which means my answer is h equals negative 27. I don't know why it won't let me write the h. This is another example of multiplication. Let's do number 7 and 8. On number 7, you have got subtraction. We need to get this by itself. The inverse of subtracting is to add. So we will add 5. This one doesn't really have us working with integers. But 13 plus 5 is 18. So 18 equals D. One more. We have to get the V alone. So we need to do the inverse of addition, which is to subtract 4. Now we have to come over here and do negative 9 minus 4. Whenever you're doing this, think of negative 9 on a number line, and then you're actually going to go to the left 4 times. So 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. V would equal negative 13. You need to be very familiar with your rules for using positives and negatives in order to do this. Goodness gracious. All right, so you guys have an assignment in Google Classroom. It's going to take you a while. Make sure that you've got scrap paper handy because you're required to show all of your steps and take pictures of your work.